In our look at lost sitcoms, DVP and DOC help Robin Hood foil Prince John's latest nefarious plot. Then, in the Old West, Joel Higgins and Mino help Christopher Lloyd's gunfighter, the Calico Kid, find his heart. Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome to another Battle of the Network shows, and we've got a unique one this week, and I'll let Rick tell you a little bit more about that and where this one came from.
Yeah, hey everybody. I want to give a shout out again to a friend of the show, Ian. Again, this season he has helped make an episode possible, and today we're going to be talking about forgotten sitcoms, two shows that didn't last very long, and they actually have been more available in the last couple of years, but not widely seen and maybe not widely known about, but we thought it'd be interesting to kind of, through the courtesy of Ian, explore these shows and talk about them on the podcast. We don't often talk about shows that are this short run, I think. We're used to kind of talking about more long-running shows for obvious reasons.
Right. So
it's interesting to kind of go into some of the little more obscure corners of the Battle of the Network shows era and talk about two things.
And these two are kind of similar in a way, and that might explain their lack of longevity. That they're sitcoms, but they're genre-based sitcoms or parody-based sitcoms.
Exactly true. We're looking at Best of the West, which is a Western sitcom, and When Things Were Rotten, which is a retelling of the Robin Hood legend. And both of them came from people with comedy pedigrees. Both of them, half-hour kind of standard sitcom formats, despite these different genre settings. And both of them did not last more than a single season.
Right, and both have cast members who, not long after, went on to somewhat bigger and better things.
Things that we have talked about on the podcast before.
Yes, and I think, especially in the case of When Things Were Rotten, you get into that if you start thinking about the alternate timeline where that show lasted, and it could have really disrupted Eight Is Enough and Love Boat.
That's true.
So Dick Van Patten, DVP, was Friar Tuck, and Bernie Capel played Alan Adale. Mm-hmm. And of course, I can't imagine anyone else as the characters they played on those other shows.
Yeah, that's true. And on Best of the West, the lead was Joel Higgins, who went on to, of course, play the dad on Silver Spoons.
Like the next year.
Yes, actually, and I guess there's it's believed that may have been that they may have had second thoughts about bringing the show back, but at the time I think Joel Higgins had already signed up to do Silver Spoons, and then they just never mind.
And then our boy Mino,
yes,
plays his son, and of course he went on to Voyagers the next year.
Yeah, the great Mino Palouse seems to turn up quite a bit on our podcast, as many of these figures do. And When Things Were Rotten, if it's known today, it's known because it was Mel Brooks helped create this.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it gets a lot of its cachet. And interestingly, both of these series in recent years have come out on DVD, but like manufactured on-demand DVD. Mm-hmm. They're both owned by CBS Paramount family, so they are available that way. And When Things Were Rotten was on 1975.
Yeah.
The 75-76 season. But Best of the West was the 1981 to 82 season. I did watch this one.
I think I did. If I didn't, there wasn't another Western comedy a few years later, was there?
Not that I recall offhand. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a pretty... I mean, there was F Troop
Right.
years before. But, I mean, Westerns in general weren't very big at the time.
Right, yeah. So I think I probably did. And I definitely, would see the title and know, oh, yeah, that show.
Yeah.
When Things Were Rotten, although I guess it aired on A&E, based on the version we watched.
Yes.
But I didn't know about that until I heard, I think, Bernie Capel mention it on Gilbert Gottfried's podcast.
Yeah, A&E for a while, like I guess in the early 80s, they had a period where they were showing like a lot of old, like Paramount-controlled sitcoms this. And it was interesting because ones that would have not nearly enough episodes for syndication, but would show up in reruns on A&E, like this and Working Stiffs with Michael Keaton and Jim Belushi, I think, and The Associates with Martin Short.
Yeah.
Some little things like that, and I'm thinking that this might have been like the same general time period.
Okay. Like package of.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And When Things Were Rotten was also on, I think it was Ha, when what became Comedy Central. Comedy Central was born out of a merger between the Comedy Channel and Ha.
Yeah.
And Ha was the one that showed sitcoms, and they showed a lot of old and rare sitcoms on that. And it was kind of unfortunate that it would combined with the other channel because all that stuff went away when it became Comedy Central. But I think it was on then when Ha debuted. I think it was probably one of the first series that they were running on there. But other than that, I don't know of a lot of appearances, and these are shows that single season When Things Were Rotten is only like 13 episodes.
Yeah.
So you can see how there wouldn't necessarily be a lot of options for them to turn up in reruns over the years.
Right, and it is. I mean, it's very Mel Brooks, so it's a lot of the jokes are of the time.
Yes.
Like referencing things that were going on then.
Yeah.
Like there's a Tony Orlando and Dawn joke, and
yeah.
so not things that were going on in the time of Robin Hood, but things that were going on in 1975.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's very Mel Brooks, the whole thing. And
Yeah.
of course, he later did Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Right.
And used maybe some of the same ideas.
Yeah, I've never seen that, but
Yeah, but
be curious about that.
the fact that it was like, I mean, and Mel Brooks was also involved with the development of Get Smart.
Yeah.
But to me, this is much more a Mel Brooks show than Get Smart was, and that's why I'm surprised that it took so long for it to get on DVD and that maybe it wasn't a little bit more widely known, because I would have always figured that the Mel Brooks Association would make it more in demand.
Right, and this is in the period where he was at his peak, right?
Yeah.
Like Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein had come out.
Yeah, this is like mid-'70s, kind of right in that time. So it's interesting now, we can talk about why it didn't work, because you were mentioning it, a lot of it does seem of its time, but yeah, it just maybe was a little bit much for people, but it just didn't do very well.
Yeah, or it just wasn't the tone of the time or something. Well, I read a couple of reviews of the DVD, and one mentioned, that Monty Python and the Holy Grail had come out around this time, and so there was something in the air, and yet this didn't fit for some reason.
Well, it's definitely it's wacky comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, another one of my favorite forgotten sitcoms or rare sitcoms. I guess maybe it's neither of those things, but Police Squad.
Yeah. And that review I read made the same comparison that for some reason this kind of comedy hasn't been very successful on TV, but then that was wildly successful once it became a movie.
Right. Yeah, I don't quite understand that.
Yeah.
And I didn't watch Police Squad when it was on the air, but now I think it's one of the best shows, and I really wish it had lasted more than 6 episodes.
I wonder if some of it has to do with momentum, that like a half hour is not long enough to sort of, how some things, like by the end of a funny thing, like you've had a lot of small laughs and then just sort of that cumulative effect makes the laughs later funnier because it's in you now.
Right.
And maybe a half hour or 20 minutes isn't enough to get that going.
Could be, especially when you're interrupted by commercials.
Yeah.
Which is, something that we didn't really experience watching these shows, but
No.
at the time, that definitely would have been part of the experience.
Yeah.
Of the two, I thought Best of the West was much better.
Yeah, Best of the West, which is not in that style, that Mel Brooks Sucker Brothers kind of style. I mean, it's just, it's set in the West, and it's funny in that setting, but it's not doing modern things, and it's not doing, those sort of one-liners or puns or anything.
Yeah.
It treats the characters like any other sitcom would treat characters, and it has stories. I mean, it's clearly almost exclusively about being funny.
Yeah.
Like it's not Taxi or something where there's like some element of drama somewhere in there or pathos or whatever. But it is other than being set in the West, is a traditional sitcom.
Yeah, I think you hit on the big difference, which is like much of Mel Brooks's work, When Things Were Rotten relies a lot on anachronisms, and that's driving it. Whereas Best of the West, it looks at, okay, what's funny about being in the West, and it has funny situations. Whereas Robin Hood, it really isn't. It's doing stuff that it could have done in any setting, a lot of it, but just kind of like, just the fact that it's in that setting is what makes it funny, not really taking advantage of the setting, I think.
Right. Or if it uses the setting, it's to create some sort of like an exaggerated gag.
Yeah.
or combine that. Like there's a thing in the episode we're kind of going to talk about where, Robin Hood uses a giant bow.
Yeah.
So that's a gag based in Robin Hood and a bow, but then they combine that with like a golf thing.
Yeah, and I actually did like that gag.
No, that was good because
Like
they kept going
like
with
there's
it.
different clubs with like numbers on it.
Yeah, and then once he hits his target, like the other merry men do the quiet clapping.
Yeah, that was very well done.
Yeah.
But there's other things like that don't necessarily. Well, they're like Mel Brooks touches. Like for example, I think multiple times in this episode, the Alan Adale character does this a lot. He just breaks the fourth wall and looks directly into the camera.
Yeah.
But he's not saying anything that's necessarily that funny.
Right.
Like to me, it's just okay. I like that sort of thing, and it's funny that he's doing it.
Yeah.
But the jokes aren't actually that good. It's just the fact that like it feels like okay, let's just create more of a manic tone and just have him look into the camera for no reason. But they didn't really have any specific good reason to do it.
No, I mean he does that in the pilot episode too. The same character.
Yeah,
So
he
it
does.
seems
He
like
does
it's
that a
his
lot.
bit.
He's like he's sort of like.
And that character traditionally is like the bard or whatever,
Right.
So I guess it's sort of like he's telling the story,
Right.
but in this it was just something about not eating chocolate because it makes his complexion break out.
Right.
And I forget the other one, but
He just says one time he just talk about bravery, he
Yeah.
just kind of shakes his head a little bit, and I think he might have even done another one, but
yeah,
and I like that sort of thing. But again, it's just kind of like just plugging this in there, and like it's just like the kind of humor like I think in the early episodes it'll be like things like I think there's maybe the first episode, one of the early episodes where like Little John is suspicious of somebody, and maybe it's Maid Marian, and he asks her something, and it's like. And then he asked the horse, like, "Oh, what about you? Where were you that time?" And he just kind of goes, "Well, you can't be too careful these days,
Yeah.
It's like the kind of joke that you would see in any Mel Brooks movie, and probably did the exact same joke, And
right, yeah,
I'm probably sound a little negative, but it's only in comparison to Best of the West.
Yeah.
Like I enjoyed when things were rotten, but Best of the West, like once I started putting those on, I didn't want to stop. Whereas when things were rotten, it seemed like one or two of those at a time is fine. Like I didn't need to watch a lot of it because it gets a little repetitive. I think
that's
I think
accurate.
it probably would be better, funnily enough, watched maybe once a week. Like
Yeah.
if it were on like back then, a half hour at a time, I probably would have been. If I were around watching it, that is to say, I probably would have liked it quite a bit. And I still enjoyed watching it now. But to me, Best of the West is one that like, man, how did that not work? And I really feel lost because I think it's actually a great show and one of the more underrated shows that I've seen in a while.
Yeah, and it does have, like you said, a good comedy pedigree. I mean, Ed Period Weinberger, and who else? I know Sam Simon was one of the writers.
Daniels,
Yeah,
I think, yeah.
and
Earl Pomerantz, created it, and he had written for Mary Tyler Moore, and a lot of these guys have been involved with Taxi, which you mentioned. So,
and I think we just mentioned recently on the Jefferson some of those guys, David Lloyd and those guys, and James Burrows directs at least some of it.
Yeah.
It's just more grounded in something that's you can relate to.
Yeah, I mean, I just know for me, I think I respond more to that style of that school of comedy than the Mel Brooks school.
Yeah,
like even movies like Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, I don't like. I'd rather, well, actually like the Zucker movies and
Right.
Airplane and Naked Gun. But to me, like comedy of the '70s, not so much Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. Like I much prefer like The Jerk or even Airplane. So to me, like I appreciate Mel Brooks, but I don't love them as much as like Spinal Tap. I love that one.
Yeah.
I don't love the Mel Brooks movies as much as a lot of other people do.
Right.
And to me, this is just it's classic Mel Brooks. For better or for worse, but to me, it's like I put that a notch below some of the other stuff I like a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, like Spinal Tap, I think it works because of the characters. It's built from the characters, not just like if Mel Brooks did a rock parody.
Yeah,
it would just be gags.
Right. Yeah. Well, and actually, Best of the West, it is grounded in characters too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's very strong characterization for pretty much everybody in the show, and where things were rotten, not so much. You have Dick Gautier, who had been on Get Smart years before, is Robin Hood, and he's playing it pretty straight, and he's kind of just being a matinee idol Robin Hood. And we've mentioned Alan Adale looking to the camera, but there's a little bit, the Merry Men, they're kind of interchangeable, a lot of what they say.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, Little John needs to eat.
Yeah.
Alan Adale talks a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's...
I don't know.
There's
There's
really
this
not much...
other Ronaldo. He's mostly distinguished by having a twin brother who's evil.
Yeah.
Who's definitely more there's more to him.
Right.
And Friar Tuck is just, I mean, this DVP, but he's just Friar Tuck.
Yeah. I mean,
he's not even the fat one.
I really think a lot of the lines, except for like those, like the character trait of like eating or little things here and there, they could be said by either one of the characters,
Right, like Maid Marian seems to be defined almost by how people react to her more than, like, it seems like everyone is in love with her.
Yeah, especially in the episode that we're doing, they really play that up.
And then she's sometimes a dumb blonde and sometimes pretending to be a dumb blonde.
Yeah.
It's a little unclear.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of got the overall impression that she's not a dumb blonde, but they definitely do make her seem that way sometimes.
Yeah. Where, like Best of the West, I mean, you have a situation, so and by the way, both of these have theme songs that have lyrics that tell you what the show's about.
Yeah, and actually, Best of the West, when I asked somebody we both know about that particular show, he started rattling off, the theme song was what he remembered. And like the gimmick where they don't say, the best of the, and then that really stood out to him, which is funny. So
yeah,
a memorable theme song, I guess, even though he hadn't seen the show in 35 years or whatever.
Yeah. So, but the basic setup is that the Joel Higgins character, Sam Best, is a Civil War veteran from Philadelphia. He's got, I think, a new wife and a son from his previous marriage, and his wife is from the South, and he's moved out west to make his claim. And he ends up becoming, in the first episode, by the end of the first episode, the marshal. And then, surround that with a bunch of oddball townspeople.
Right. There's Tom Ewell is the doctor, who's also the town drunk.
Yeah.
There's Mino is the son, and Leonard Fry is Parker Tillman.
Yeah.
Who is, of course, every good Western town has a saloon keeper / banker /
Right. He's the Al Swearingen of
Best
of the West.
Right. A guy that's got his like finger in every pie and just has something going on, and like if there's gambling, he's involved with it. If there's drinking, he's involved with it. If there's other activities, he's involved with them.
Right. And then there's like a woman who's a Laney, is that her name?
Yes, Laney.
Who's like a fur trapper.
Yeah. And she's essentially like his deputy.
Yeah.
And Valerie Bromfeld,
yeah,
like a comedian.
Right.
And she's very over the top, animated. Yeah. I mean, pretty much everybody is except Joel Higgins.
Right. Tracy Walter plays Frog, who's Tillman's sort of toady.
Yeah. Does anything that needs to be done, Frog does it.
Yeah.
And Frog is very slow-witted.
And then various guest stars, and a lot of good guest stars. I mean, I haven't watched as many as you have, but even just reading the list of guest stars.
Betty White, Dixie Carter.
Andy Griffith.
Made an appearance.
Slim Pickens.
Yeah, they got some talent. And one of the most notable ones in the episode we're going to talk about is Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah.
Who made several appearances.
Was he already on Taxi by then?
I believe he would have been, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's great.
Oh, yeah, he's fantastic.
He plays the Calico Kid. Yeah. This episode actually is the Calico Kid Returns. Mm-hmm. So it's the 4th episode, and we'd seen him earlier in the pilot. And he also makes an appearance later, and all those episodes are very much recommended. But I just want to point out something that might be of interest to you, Mike, if you're not aware of this. This episode we're going to talk about premiered October 1st, 1981, and it aired Thursday, 8:30. Okay, so it was after Mork and Mindy. Mm-hmm. So this, when I saw that, I was like, okay, this explained why I would watch it, because I would have watched Mork and Mindy, would have watched Best of the West. Do you know... Well, on NBC at 8:30 was Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island.
Oh, well, I didn't see this episode then because I was watching that.
Yeah. And, okay, can you guess what was on CBS Thursday night at 8:30? And it's actually...
1981.
On CBS, yes, Thursday night, 8:30. And I actually have even the specific episode, I think, you might find this interesting. The Digger Doyle episode, a rerun, actually. A rerun of the Digger Doyle episode of Magnum P.I.
I was going to say Magnum, but then I didn't for some reason.
And actually on his blog, when he had a series of posts about the show, Earl Pomerantz talked about how he created Best of the West. And he pointed as to one of the reasons why it didn't last. He said, well, for one thing, he said that the network probably wasn't really behind it to begin with, that maybe they were kind of half-hearted. But he said that, well, they put it up against Magnum P.I.
Yeah.
And like shortly after the show premiered, I think Magnum was new then, too. And people were. He said he was seeing Tom Selleck on magazine covers all over and he knew that they were in trouble. So then they moved the show to Friday nights, and they put it up against Dallas, which was the number one show on TV at the time. So, I mean, you got to have something to put up against Dallas, but it ran up against some tough opposition. So I just want to point out that a little BOTNS history, the Digger Doyle episode that we talked about. Was up against this very episode.
And then, of course, Joel Higgins and Aaron Gray would be on Silver Spoons the next year.
Exactly. It's all connected.
It is.
Should we talk about the episode, or do you want to talk about the rest of the Calico Kid episode before? Or
I say we do When Things Are Rotten first.
Okay.
Just
because
historically, and it came first.
Gotcha. Okay.
And we don't like it as much.
Yeah. So the When Things Were Rotten was the 7th episode. And it premiered October 22nd, 1975. And, it was part of a lineup of comedies. But what interesting to me was this particular episode went up against Game 7 of the 1975 World Series.
Ouch.
Which was on NBC. And, one of the most famous World Series of all time. So, that was. I don't think this was seen by too many people that night. But it was Ding Dong. What's the name of the episode?
Oh, I forgot to write it down.
Ding Dong, the Bell Is Gone, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Yes. Or Ding Dong, the Bell Is...
I think it's gone.
Is dead. Ding
dead.
Dong, the Bell Is Dead.
Yeah.
Yes. And so now the story of this, a lot of the When Things Were Rotten episodes to me seem to be, they're revolved around, and much like any Robin Hood series, there's some kind of situation that contrives some way for Robin to have to confront, to go into the castle.
Right.
Because it's Prince John, Sheriff of Nottingham, and Bertram.
Yeah.
And in theory, Robin Hood could really just go around Sherwood Forest doing his thing and stay away from them. But in order to have suspense, they always have to put Robin into the castle.
Yeah.
Or, to get him close to them. Otherwise, they'd never catch him.
This one, it's just a thing so that he can do something. I mean, he is robbing the rich, but he's not robbing the rich. The sheriff has stolen the bell from the abbey.
Yeah, he's restoring he's doing justice. Yeah.
Yes, where like the pilot he actually does rob.
Yeah.
The rich, assume to give the poor so that they can pay the rich again.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is a good scam,
right?
I mean, but it is their money. It's just going back and forth.
Right. So the sheriff has got a scheme to steal this this bell, this beautiful
a Stradibelius.
Yeah. In order to sell it to like an Ethiopian prince.
Yeah, or to give it to them. I think it's a gift, right?
Yeah. But
the
idea is like
never gets established why they want to have diplomatic relations with Ethiopia.
The whole thing, it's pretty flimsy, really.
Yeah.
The whole premise of it is weird, and it seems pretty bold, even for the evil sheriff, who we should mention he is a conniving sheriff.
Yes.
And he's played by your boy. Is he not? Henry Pollock II?
I don't think he is. From Webster.
Yeah, so which hopefully we'll talk about someday in the podcast. But and star of $10,000 Pyramid.
That's right.
Henry Pollock II. And I think he's very good.
He is, yeah.
He's sort of like a persnickety sheriff that you would kind of expect Henry Pollock to play.
Right, yeah.
So he's got this scam, and
he's not unskilled. Like, he's not a complete pushover.
No, he's competent. The sheriff? Yeah, he's competent. Everybody else is an idiot.
Yes.
Including John, or...
Prince John,
John, yes.
Played by your boy, Ron Rifkin.
He's your boy.
He's what? No.
Well, what else? He was on Alias, right?
He's on
Alias. That
Alias.
makes him your boy.
And I never watched Alias.
You didn't watch Alias?
No, you watched it.
No, I didn't watch Alias.
I didn't watch Alias.
This podcast took a turn. I don't think I watched a single episode of
Alias.
Alias.
I thought you'd watched it.
I thought you did watch that.
No, I've been curious about it, but I've never watched. And he got held up by a window, from a window by Russell Crowe in L.A. Confidential.
Definitely a noted character actor, though.
Yes, and he's playing Prince John, I would say, as a child.
Yes,
a spoiled child.
Which is interesting because in the first episode he didn't play him. Well, the first episode he appeared in, which I don't think he was in the first episode, but he played him totally differently.
Yeah,
he played him more like a general, like a lout, like crude, but not like he's playing him here like this more fey kind of man-child,
right,
like infant kind of character.
Yeah, and I think the word that fey could be used for all three of these
exactly.
characters.
That's definitely the case.
Which is definitely a kind of an out-of-date thing.
And very common in Mel Brooks.
Yes.
A big Mel Brooks trope.
Yeah. and not and in this case they're all conniving and evil too.
Yeah.
So that's not really a great way to present those kind of characters, and yet it's all ambiguous in terms of what their interests might be.
Right.
And the most that way or exaggerated of them is certainly Bertram, who's just like beyond over the top.
Yeah.
Now the bell, though, it's like the best bell in the world. Whenever it rings, flowers bloom,
Yeah.
deer frolic, and everyone
Yeah.
gets sort of mesmerized and hums along with it.
Just real conversation can really activate it, right? It's not.
Yeah, it's very sensitive.
It's extremely sensitive.
Yes.
So they have acquired this bell, and they're also going to have a big reception for this Ethiopian prince.
Yes.
So the idea is that the abbot.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name. Does he even have a name?
No, he's just the abbot.
Just the Friar Tuck, of course, is in the pipeline. I guess he's still got contacts in that world.
Yeah.
And so the idea is like, hey, this is wrong. We got to get this back.
Yeah.
And liberate the bell from the people that have stolen it. So that's what sets it up, and they have to get into the castle during this event. During this event is a good time for them to go in and take the bell because everybody will be at this banquet.
Yes. And we get some gags in that setup. Like DVP calls the abbot by saying, "Hey, abbot."
Yeah.
And there's a thing where Robin Hood's trying to come up with a plan, and the abbot says, "We don't have time for that." And so like the film speeds up, and he comes up with a plan quicker, and it's like a football reference. And they're gonna wrap the bell in gauze and sneak in, and Little John is gonna lift the bell and lower it down by a rope, and they can't take swords because that could set off the bell, and which by the way is 2,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Little John's very strong.
He is. He's a bear of a man.
Yes. We see that he's very hungry. The thing where Maid Marian's going on about all the food that's going to be at the banquet.
Yes, and his mouth's practically watering at the
Yeah.
thought. Yeah, it didn't seem like they thought to stuff him before they went. I guess they didn't have time.
They might not have a lot of food.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
That's true too. Yeah, he seems to be like just really hungry. Like almost thought. I think there was another episode where he was like specifically on a diet, and he was like they were withholding food from him, and that was a thing. So I almost thought that was what was going on here, but no, he was just hungry.
As I learned recently, which I already knew, but from a TV show featuring a doctor, deprivation doesn't work.
No.
That's just the path to failure.
Yeah. And I think this binge eating is ultimately going to do harm long term to Little John.
Right. And we have a little bit of the banquet. Bertram does some sort of faux African language that involves a lot of clicking and things that pretty sure aren't part of Ethiopian language, but turns out the guy can speak English. So.
Yeah.
But so Bertram says he learned that at Nottingham Junior College. And then later the prince says, so you went to Sherwood Junior College, which, splitting hairs. But the main joke, and this adds a layer of ambiguity to Bertram. The prince says very knowingly, did you know Susan Levinson? And Bertram makes a face, and then they do like a fist bump.
Yeah. And to me, that was kind of like that kind of shows a perfect example of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That like they sort of sacrifice Bertram's character in order to get that joke in about like them knowing each other and doing the little hand jive thing.
Yeah.
Because there's only so many characters that the Ethiopian prince could have said that to, and they're just like, oh, well, we'll just do Bertram is the only one that really makes sense to do. But
right, yeah.
And it might not even make that much sense, but yeah we'll do it.
And the prince is played by Thalmus Rasulala. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but who I guess he played Raj's dad on What's Happening?
Bill, his no account father.
And lots of other characters.
Yes, I got very excited when I saw that. The Bill episodes were always emotional episodes of What's Happening. Okay. He had a complicated relationship with his kids.
Oh, I'm sure. And he, depending on the necessity of the show, is either playing him very regal or playing him sort of like a jive guy.
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed that sometimes. He would sort of do, every now and then he'd go street in quotes.
Yes.
But...
we see the merry men. This is very Mel Brooks too. They're traveling in a yeehaw wagon.
Yeah.
And then we get the golf thing. And so they're sneaking into the castle at this point. the princess being adult. I wrote that down. I think it was when he wanted to ring the bell.
Yeah,
He's like, it's my
the
bell.
sheriff had to remind him that
Yeah,
that
right.
it wasn't his turn.
Yes. And so while the merry men are up there, Bertram and a couple guards go up to ring the bell. It's Bertram's time to ring the bell.
Mm-hmm.
The merry men, of course, cover their ears so they don't get mesmerized by the bell. And that we get one of the street things where the prince says, "That is the heaviest sound this bad dude has ever heard."
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, in the bell tower, some gauze falls on Bertram, and then you have this like wacky fight where Robin Hood doesn't have a sword, but
Yeah.
And Bertram is reacting as if he has a sword.
Right, right.
And then it turns out one of the guards is actually Alan Adale in disguise. I don't believe that was his scheduled duty.
No, I guess they improvised pretty quickly.
Yeah. So they get the better of them, and then Little John can't lift the bell because he's hungry.
Yeah, he's weak. Needs
Yes.
sustenance.
At the banquet, there's also a very Mel Brooksy waiter.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, I
Carl
did that.
Ballantyne, who, there's some people that to me, like, whatever they're saying, they can say it funny, and he's one of those guys.
Yeah.
And his whole thing, and he was actually in at least one other episode playing a different character.
Okay.
But, he comes on, and to me, he's hilarious.
All right, Little John doesn't tip him to give him Maid Marian a note.
Yeah. So he's doing like a little monologue about,
Yeah.
me with my problems, and they should call us the sheriff, Nothingham,
Yeah. Given as Mel Brooks, I did, and the way he's delivering his lines, I called him a Jewish comedian waiter.
Yeah, I mean, it's
that's
definitely
fair, right?
that kind of thing. But if you've seen like Carl Ballantyne on McHale's Navy, or even like some of his stage act or whatever, you know exactly what he's doing. He's doing that, and totally in line with Mel Brooks.
So Maid Marian needs to distract people so that Little John can get some food. So she throws her spoon on the floor, and everyone else at the banquet, men and women, to be fair, tries to get the spoon. They all want to get the spoon to impress her, I guess.
Yeah, which
she has this effect on them.
she does. Yeah, I don't know if they played that up a lot in some of the other episodes, but this one they definitely do. And
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with it or anything.
I mean, I know in the pilot, like, there's a similar banquet, and she and the sheriff are, dancing. He says, like, "Why are you repulsed by me?" or something.
Yeah.
It's clear that he's after her.
Yeah, and that's part of the traditional, like a lot of these Robin Hood retellings, there's always some kind of like triangle. It's usually, there's no interest on her part, but still.
But that helps distract long enough so Little John can get under the table, and then she can give him food, like an entire chicken or half a turkey. I don't know what
Right.
brand of poultry that was, but and he steals some food from the prince's plate, and the prince freaks out, and then finally she blows out the candles so he can sneak away.
Right.
And there was just a brief someone saying, "It appears someone didn't pay their candle bill."
Yeah, yeah.
And even then, Little John goes back and he still can't do it, and Robin Hood has to give him a candy bar.
Yeah, it was something like
That's a Nottingham Good and Nutty.
yeah, his favorite.
And that's where Alan Dale talks about chocolate. So he moves the bell, and the prince and everyone else comes up to ring the bell, which of course isn't there anymore. And Robin is still there, and he had told the men to wait that he would whistle, and when he whistled, they should ring the bell from where they are. So when he's in trouble, because there are quite a few guards and the sheriff, he whistles and the bell rings, and that distracts them all, and he's able to escape. And the prince also finds out that this is all a scam.
Right.
He's not impressed.
And to his credit, yes, he rejects their
And
evil ways.
tells Prince John that if he were not a prince, he'd bust him upside his head.
Right.
And that's about it, except for possibly the entire reason we chose this particular episode.
Yeah, they've got the tag at the end, and the grateful abbot is distributing gifts
Yes.
from the abbey to everybody. Right.
There's a shawl from Brother Who, a prayer book from Brother What, and a rosary from Brother I Don't Know. Which leads to, yet again, DVP being involved in a recreation of Who's on First.
Yeah. I'd like to think that he inspired this, and he was the one that instigated this whole bit.
I want to think that, and I want to think that he did that on 80s Enough, too.
Yeah.
Clearly he loved Abbott and Costello.
Yeah.
Maybe he's was known in celebrity circles for
Could be.
doing riffs on Who's on First.
Yeah, like at parties, like they'd ask him to get up and do it.
Yeah.
Do Who's on First.
And he can
As a
do
party
both
trick.
sides of it.
Yeah. You can't.
Right, and A's enough, correct? He was doing the Abbott part, right? Or did they? I'm having trouble remembering now.
No, I think he was.
He ended up doing the Costello part.
Yes, he was doing the Abbott part, and
in
no,
rehearsal.
no, he was exasperated in both of them. Yeah, he. No, I'm just thinking. I'm thinking of him doing it, and I'm thinking of the exasperation.
Yes, that's right, because he was nominated for.
Yes, he was doing the Costello part in both. I believe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it was fun that he was doing that, of course, and somehow more absurd than the original sketch. Like, I can buy baseball players named that, but
yeah,
Abbots,
yeah,
or monks,
yeah.
friars, whatever they are.
Yeah.
But it also did a thing you don't see often anymore, I don't think, and we haven't talked about. We've talked about the freeze frame at the end, but the TV fade out.
Ah, yes.
They're still going.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, another thing I like is too is Robin like smiles and like gestures to everybody else, and they just like leave them to continue to continue, and they just kind of smile like, let's leave them to do this, and they are presumably going off, and who knows how long.
Right.
DVP and the Abbott are doing this.
Yeah.
I kind of like things like that.
Right. What do you think? They never get to the third base part. So what what's the exasperated thing you would say in this gag?
No, what's the one that did the second one? But it looked like they were getting there, and actually, I really enjoyed it.
I did.
It was pretty good. I would have watched another minute or two of that.
Yeah. So the Abbott Costello one, Abbott is mostly patient in that.
Yeah, Costello's
because he's not always patient with Costello, but
right.
Yeah, and this the guy playing the monk who looks very familiar, but is definitely. I mean, since he's playing an Abbott, is very patient with this.
Yes,
which makes it more fun in a way.
Yeah. They could have milked that a little bit longer, but it's probably just to put that where it is. That's fine. But a very good way to end the episode. Right.
So we already kind of talked about our feelings on it, but I mean it's very amusing.
I may have undersold it a bit. It's really good. I would definitely recommend it.
I mean, especially if you like that kind of comedy.
Yeah, yeah. If you're a Mel Brooks fan, it's a must see.
Yeah,
I'd say there's no doubt about it. Or even if you're a fan of any of those actors that we mentioned, a lot of them were in other shows, and they're doing their thing in this, and you won't be disappointed, I think, by seeing them in this.
And Robin Hood, if you're a Robin Hood fan.
Yeah. Now
it definitely, like, the pilot seemed like you could tell, and maybe just based on knowing he did this and a movie, that he must have loved like the classic Robin Hood movie.
Yeah.
Like the first one had, I think, references to him sliding down the curtains and things like that.
I mean, you can kind of see, like we talked about, why it didn't work, but also, this was on ABC, and this is still a couple, like a year or two before ABC became like really big. So this was still CBS time, and like this episode, it was on That's My Mama was after it, and then Beretta and Starsky and Hutch. Now, in a couple of years, like Three's Company would come in, and Happy Days, and ABC would be huge. Yeah. But right now, they weren't quite at that level yet.
This is when Happy Days was on, but not a big hit?
I think it was not. Yeah, it wasn't like the number one. It's like, so 1975.
And is this when Fred Silverman moved to ABC?
I think it was just around this time, maybe like after this season. So I'm thinking it was like, this is like 75, 76, and it was either 77. It was either this or the next season or the season after that where ABC actually became number one. Yeah. And CBS had been like number one for years. So, and that was part of it, was Fred Silverman coming over and ABC just changing things and starting to go towards some of these younger shows and things that we've talked about, like Charlie's Angels, Three's Company, that became like these big hits.
I gotta say that lineup though is just I wouldn't imagine putting When Things Are Rotten and That's My Mama together necessarily.
Yeah, I mean there's
and then two gritty cop shows.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't really seem to make much sense. I don't think it was out of the ordinary. I mean, this is like, I think the regular fall lineup at the time, so it wasn't like they were screwing things around because they were up against the World Series. This was what they regularly had. And actually, CBS had Tony Orlando and Don was on.
Oh, that's right.
At the same time, yeah. So there you go.
By the way, that joke was that it's Prince and Jomo and Don.
Yeah. And the end, yeah. I definitely give it a thumbs up, but it's Best of the West I like much, much better.
Yeah. So let's talk about that episode. And I think we've already mentioned all the cast in that. But so yeah, the Calico Kid is a gunfighter, an outlaw. He showed up in the pilot episode. In a way, forced Sam Best to become marshal. Because they don't have a marshal before that, right?
Yes.
And Sam actually shot his hand.
Yeah.
And the doc fixed his hand.
Yeah.
They hear the Laney comes in the saloon, the Square Deal saloon, and tells him the Calico Kid is back. She thinks he wants to kill her. I forget her reasoning, and then she realizes, no, Sam shot him.
Yeah.
And then the doc thinks it's because of him, because he charged too much.
Yeah, for fixing his hand. Yeah.
But everybody's on. They're nervous.
And then even Tillman.
Yeah.
Is very blasé about it first, and then Frog. I guess it's Frog reminds him that. No, was it Frog? It was the doc. Yeah. Somebody reminds him that he never paid him he hired him originally.
I think it was Frog.
Yeah.
Who actually isn't on that episode, but. You know.
He originally hired him and it never paid him, I guess.
Yeah.
So then because before it was one of those classic sitcom setups where before he's saying we welcome the Calico Kid and and he says by the way you never paid him. He's like, I only wish I could see him in person.
Right,
he starts packing up and getting out of there as fast as he could.
Yeah. And I believe the doc says he's going to go get some coffee in Brazil. But good old Sam Best, he's like, we don't need to worry about him.
Yeah.
Even before the Calico Kid comes in, he's a little worried, but then he comes in and he's tired of being a gunfighter. It's like Unforgiven. He's done. He almost got shot the day before, and he wants to do something else. And so Sam, as the marshal of the town, is like, well, you know what? You can come live here. And Laney's like, everybody here has a job. I like that.
Yeah.
Everybody has some sort of job that they do to fulfill a quota of Western town.
Right.
And the Calico Kid says he can cook because after all these years of being on his own, he knows how to cook. The doc, apparently the saloon is hiring, so he goes in to talk to Tillman.
Yeah, who's skeptical.
And emptying the safe to
Yeah.
get out of town. He also briefly pretends to be an Irish priest.
Yeah.
Even turning his collar around.
Yeah. And what does he say? Something like, you wouldn't shoot somebody pretending to be an Irish priest, would you?
Yeah.
Or pretending to be a priest.
So, now, since we mentioned the Faye characters on When Things Were Rotten, is Leonard Fry, I guess, was out of the closet.
I'm not sure about that.
Some of his roles.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I can't repeat the name of one, but
okay.
I think maybe that he was kind of open about it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know about the character.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing like at the time, like went right over my head. But like I would have just thought of him as just Western bad guy Faye.
Right.
Like in the way like Snidely Whiplash is Faye.
Yes. Yeah. They're all of these characters are in sort of Snidely Whiplash.
But then, now watching it now, it's like, but I don't know if he's playing it that way. Because there's other episodes where you would totally think, where the character is clearly, interested in women and cavorting with or doing things with the women that work at the saloon, if you catch my drift.
Yes, yeah.
So I don't think the character is intended to be that way. But like his delivery, he just got that that deadpan delivery.
Yeah.
It's like now I watch it and you do kind of wonder.
Yeah. There is a joke in this where the Calico Kid he's trying to sell him on the idea of cooking, and he's saying, I can put more salt in things, which will make everyone drink more. Can put herbs in things, it'll make people drowsy so they don't know they're being cheated when they play cards. And we know certain foods will make men lust for women. And he has some sort of sample of food, and I don't think Tillman tries it. He's looking at it, and he's like, I'm not really feeling lustful for women. Then the bigger joke is his collar is still turned around, and the Calico Kid turns it back around.
Yeah.
As if that'll...
Right.
Like, because he's a priest. But I don't know if that was a wink or anything.
Yeah.
It's just because of this era of TV that there are these coded characters like that. Or, like, maybe not like him, but I do question if that's intentional or not.
Could be. He's pretty much the kind of guy, like, everything he says, it's for comic effect, and like the way he says things is funny. Again on that Earl Pomerantz blog, he said that originally when they brought him in, he didn't like the way he did it at first because he said he was a nice guy and everything, but he thought he wasn't trusting the material, and he was being funny, but he was being funny like adding extra to it and not just reading it the way it was written or something. Which is funny because you watch it now and it certainly seems like he's bringing something to it.
Yeah.
But they asked him to do it again, and then he kind of changed his performance, and then he was fine. But apparently at first he was like just trying to embellish it too much. But to me, I mean, he's such a great character. He's such like a snake.
Yeah.
And just he does a lot of things that are predictable, like his changes of fortune, but because he's such an opportunist. But he's hilarious to me.
Yeah, and he's like, a sort of bad guy.
Yeah, he's not totally irredeemable. I mean, he's like selfish.
Yeah, he's not feeding the pigs down the street with
he's not quite
bodies of people he killed.
Right, he's not quite that level. Yeah. I mean, he's like the kind of character that like you have to talk him into something, but eventually, like if you need a favor, he'll kind of like sigh and give you the favor, but he'll also get something in return for it.
Yeah,
but it'll still help you out.
Right.
And there's other episodes where he like helps the town out, and he's pursuing his own interests, but he's not
right. He benefits
totally
from the town being safe.
Yeah,
he just doesn't want some busybody getting in his criminal enterprises.
Yeah,
but anyway, he does hire the Calico Kid.
Yeah,
who then is cooking food and including Weasel Oscar, which apparently is the Tillman bought all this weasel because the kid said he could make it taste like veal. But the doc knows it's weasel, but he likes it.
Yeah. And when Tillman asks him about it, the Calico Kid, he says, "Well, I said the meat, not the pelts."
Right. So is he serving pelts?
Yeah, I don't know. He must be a real wizard in the kitchen.
But it seems good, but then a gunfighter comes in and wants to challenge him, and that gunfighter is played by Burton Gilman, who was in Blazing Saddles.
Yeah, he's
the Camptown Races guy.
A big character actor,
among other things, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure he's in the campfire scene too.
I guess.
I mean, he's like one of the main bad guys, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
But this guy wants to, of course, if you're the best, somebody's going to come take you down. It's one of the reasons he wants to retire, and he's kind of resisting. And this guy keeps like, insulting him, insulting his mother. But then he looks at his gravy and says it looks kind of lumpy. And the kid, give me a gun.
Yeah.
And he shoots the gun out of the guy's hand, but the guy leaves. He chases him out. But while he's out, everyone else pretty much is like, well, we don't feel safe with him around. So Sam has to tell him the hard news. He's got to go. End of episode.
Yeah. Well, Sam's the thing I like about the Sam character is he's a decent guy, and that's kind of what he is. He usually tries to do the right thing, and he's kind of the one that will come up with a solution and try to find a way to do things without the bad outcomes happening. In this case, he hatches a scheme that would help the Calico Kid not get shot again.
Right. And it's nice because like at first it felt like the episode was so focused on Christopher Lloyd that the rest of the cast was getting the backseat a little bit, but then this scheme becomes it's like they're putting on a play kind of thing, and everyone behaves the way sitcom characters do when they get the chance. Like, well, I want a line.
Right.
What do I do?
They're going to stage a gunfight that will leave the Calico Kid presumed dead.
Yeah.
So that nobody will want to challenge him anymore.
Right. So he's supposed to wear a bulletproof vest made out of beaver tails. And Laney's got lines, and the doc has some lines, and his wife Elvira, Sam's wife Elvira, has some lines. It all seems like a good plan. It doesn't quite go off without a hitch, though. In fact, there are many hitches. Some of it just being people not knowing their lines.
Right. And some of it being maybe not that great a plan to begin with.
Right, yeah.
And not everybody being involved in the plan.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe the big one.
That's right. Frog doesn't know the plan. Tillman doesn't know the plan.
Right. And, of course, they're going to stage this in the saloon.
Right. Not only people don't necessarily remember their lines, but the Calico Kid just seems very bad at improvising. Like, weird things happen, and he keeps doing it. Like, it's hard to describe, but, like, it's just a Christopher Lloyd kind of thing, but, like, just holding his arms out and, like...
Right. Well,
like, what do I do now?
Yeah, he forgets he's not sure what he's supposed to say.
Yeah.
So, somebody whispers it to him, and then he says his line, but he whispers it because they're stage whispering, or they're whispering so that the other gunfighter doesn't hear.
Thing to do.
Yeah. And then, when after that, goes nowhere, then she throws up her hands like she doesn't know what to do, and then he does that as if that's what he was supposed to do next. It's really good. You got to see it, but
Yeah, and Tillman comes out and he's like, he's not supposed to come out here and ask things.
yeah, yeah,
But they finally get to the point they're about to stage this fight, and then the gunslinger comes back for another chance,
right, and
which throws off everything.
and he's willing to start a shooting.
Yeah, good thing that kid's got that beaver tail vest on.
Yeah, he gets shot in the chest, fortunately, and
Yeah, nothing happens.
has no effect. Yeah,
But then they get him to play dead. But at that point, the townspeople who weren't in on it are a little suspicious because he's
Yeah.
still breathing. And,
right, because it doesn't like Sam gets involved. Has to.
Yeah.
He does get his quote unquote real shot. I guess has the Calico Kid go down, and then
Right.
Frog and Tillman come over and examine him.
yeah, and the doc, knowing what was going on, had bet Tillman $100
Yeah,
that Sam would win,
right.
and he declares him dead. But of course, they figure out that he's not, and Tillman takes his money back. And,
Right, they're like they see his chest moving. Frog sees his chest moving, and then
yeah,
Tillman goes down and is looking at him and pretty much
like
knows
tickles
right
his
away.
nose with a feather or
Yeah.
something.
So then he sneezes, and then the doc's like, "Not only is this man dead, he's sick."
Yeah. I guess it's successful somehow, but he's free to go roam again under a new identity,
Yeah.
solve crimes,
Right.
whatever he's gonna do. Cook, just be a short order cook. I would watch that show.
Yeah.
The Calico Kid wandering from town to town, cooking
Yeah.
and solving people's problems.
Yeah. I mean, he's an excellent cook.
Yeah.
He's an excellent gunfighter.
Yep.
And he'd probably figure out how to solve people's problems along the way.
Yeah.
He could learn that.
Yeah. So he comes to say his goodbyes, and for no reason at all, he plants a big kiss on Sam, who then looks startled, and Calico Kid says, "Never kissed a marshal before. It's not all that great."
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the end, I think.
Yeah. A good episode.
A very good episode.
You know,
Yeah.
Christopher Lloyd is always entertaining, and he was very funny in this.
Yeah.
Like you said, they managed to get the rest of the cast involved, and just a solidly crafted episode.
And it's just a good ensemble too.
Yeah.
And it has that James Burroughs feel.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something else that Pomerantz mentioned. I think it was Jimmy Burroughs,
Yeah.
if I may,
Yes.
who directed the pilot.
Right.
And I think he said something like right away he did, like, everybody's got some story of like him going in and like coming up with something funny. I guess in this case it's something like he looked at the script and he said like, okay, there's your funny right there, and he pointed to like page 2 or 3, and he's like, well, I was hoping that the funny would be earlier than that, but it turned out like he had found some bit of business that he could seize on, and that's where so you're absolutely right, but it's just well made, and it's kind of I like westerns, and it's I like a multi-camera sitcom in a western setting. I kind of wish there were more of those. I mean, this did a really good job of like, okay, coming up with things like, well, what's funny about this, and taking like, okay, the gunfight thing, the saloon thing, the old country doctor, the old timey medicine kind of thing. All those things kind of get covered in this series, and in this episode, we see a good deal of that.
So I watched like 4 of these. I watched the 3 Calico Kid ones, and the one with Slim Pickens and Richard Mole.
Oh yeah,
Which is really good.
he's a prisoner that they
Yeah. And I guess the 3rd Calico Kid one has a school set.
Yeah.
But in general, it's just either the saloon or the best's home.
Yes, very rarely do they go outside there. There's a.
Weren't they going to have a general store in the pilot at least?
Yes, they do have the ones more like there's a jail. Yeah, the jail, and then you see some more of like the saloon because Tillman's got like a room.
Oh, right.
You see like actually like upstairs rooms. You see them more.
Okay.
And they do some sort of like outdoor like set kind of things because like there's one episode that's really good where Tillman's going to be hanged. So.
Okay.
But they confine most of it a lot to the saloon and the Sam's their best house.
Right. And the saloon, I mean, it's a classic saloon set, but it's also kind of a classic, again, Jimmy Burroughs sitcom set, like a big room.
Yeah, you can tell it's laid out with specific angles, and people will generally the main characters will generally be sitting at one of the same two or three tables for optimal camera work and reaction shots. But yeah, it's very well produced. I really wish that there were more of this because I love this one season that we got.
Yeah. I definitely want to watch, I guess, the rest of it.
The rest of the Best of the West?
The rest of the Best of the West, yeah.
Yeah, I would give this highest recommendation.
Yeah.
If any of this sounds appealing to you, check it out because it holds up very well.
I agree. Okay. I don't have anything else.
I don't think so. I just think I would say that I like the idea of keeping alive some of these shows that maybe they didn't get that fabled 100 episode.
Yeah.
But it's good to revisit these, and I'm glad we're talking about them because it's a good reminder that just because a show isn't as famous or because it didn't last as long, there's a lot of like gold in them thar hills,
right,
you might say. But in some of these these hidden gems, and I really like, and as a TV watcher, I mean, like you and I both. One of the reasons we're doing this podcast is we grew up watching all this stuff over and over again.
Yeah.
But to me, what really excites me now is some of the obscurities and some of the rare things. So, I mean, there's so many shows that we'll continue talking about. The bigger ones, we've barely scratched the surface.
Right.
But hopefully we can go back sometimes and keep looking at some things like Search was a good example of that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good, like these hidden sitcoms. Sometimes it's just a matter of finding them. And again, I would just give a final shout out to Ian for helping us find these two in particular. This episode brought to you by Nottingham Good and Nutty, for when you need to carry a 2,000-pound bell. This episode also brought to you by the Square Deal Saloon. Try our Wheeze veal. This episode also brought to you by our benevolent ruler, Prince Wheeze John. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network Shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Battle of the Network Shows.